4 college students in Moscow, Idaho on November 13th, stabbed to death in their beds in a crime that has horrified and mystified the nation.
This is one of the 6 roommates in that house. There were 6. 4 of them were stabbed to death. 2 of them survived.
Hunter Johnson and Emily Allant were 2 of the first people to arrive at the King Road house that November morning. These are the friends who prompted the 911 call. Their actions described by other families as heroic. But for them, it was a morning that changed everything.
One lucky girl to be surrounded by these people every day. 21-year-old Kaylee Goncalves wrote on Instagram, not knowing it would be her final post. That same night, her friend Ethan Chapin texted his sister, "I love you," out of the blue. Moscow, Idaho, November 13, 2022. A peaceful college town was about to wake up to a nightmare. By sunrise, 4 students lay dead and a baffling mystery had begun. Moscow is a small, tight-knit town where the University of Idaho campus buzzes with youthful optimism. In fall 2022, life was good for 6 friends renting an off-campus house on King Road, especially Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. Kaylee and Madison, both 21, were lifelong best friends. Kaylee was a bright spark with a new tech job in Texas on the horizon. Maddie was her cheerful other half. They were more like sisters than friends, utterly inseparable. Xana, 20, and Ethan, 20, were a fun-loving couple in that friend group. Xana's infectious laugh and bold personality complemented Ethan's easygoing, big-hearted charm. They brought each other so much happiness. Xana once wrote to Ethan, "Life is so much better with you in it, love you." All 4 were charismatic, close to their families, and surrounded by good friends. They shared a rental home not far from campus, a place full of coming and going college energy and camaraderie. On Saturday, November 12, 2022, everything seemed normal and joyful. Kaylee had actually moved out of the King Road house a few weeks prior. She was set to graduate early, but she returned for the weekend to spend time with Maddie and show off her recently purchased Range Rover. That night, Kaylee and Maddie went out for a girls' night, laughing with friends at a downtown bar and stopping by a late-night food truck for mac and cheese on the way home. Ethan and Xana spent the evening together at a fraternity party, dancing and having a great time. By 1:45 a.m. in the early hours of November 13th, all 4 were back at their gray off-campus house, safe and sound. They chatted briefly, then one by one retreated to their bedrooms, happy and tired from the night out. A final snapshot of joy. Just hours before the tragedy, Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan smiled together, carefree and blissfully unaware of the horror about to unfold. It was the last photo ever taken of all 4 friends. Within hours, their joy would turn to unfathomable tragedy. By 2 a.m., all were asleep under the same roof, believing they were safe at home. None of them sensed the danger that was about to strike. Late the next morning, a 911 call shattered the Sunday calm. An unconscious person was reported at 1122 King Road.
911 location of your emergency.
Something is happening. Something's happened in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
Friends had found something terribly wrong inside the house and frantically summoned help. Police officers arrived expecting to find someone passed out or ill. Moscow hadn't seen a murder in years. Instead, they found a scene of horror, 4 bodies brutally stabbed, blood everywhere. Inside those familiar bedrooms were Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan, all lifeless from a frenzied knife attack. First responders were shaken to their core. It was a nightmare beyond anything the small-town police had encountered.
The loss of Xana, Kaylee, Madison, and Ethan remains the highest priority for the Moscow Police Department. We will continue putting all of our resources into investigating and solving these murders.
Outside, surviving roommates and friends sobbed in shock on the lawn as the awful reality set in. Paramedics and police vehicles crowded the street, and yellow crime scene tape was stretched around the property. The whole community trembled with grief and fear, A killer was on the loose and no one knew who it was or why this happened. News of the massacre spread rapidly. Parents of students urgently called their children to make sure they were safe. The University of Idaho canceled classes, and a pall of sorrow descended over campus. 4 young lives had been cruelly snuffed out in the middle of the night, and the question on everyone's mind was who could have done this.
He had to know when people were coming, people were going.
As investigators worked the case, the public began to learn about the 4 victims, not as crime statistics, but as beloved people with families and dreams. Kaylee Goncalves was ambitious and adventurous, the kind of person who lit up a room. Madison Mogen, Maddie, was her best friend since childhood, the gentle, kind-hearted counterpoint to Kaylee's spunky spirit. The Goncalves and Mogen families described the girls as virtually inseparable. They had grown up together, planned to be in each other's weddings, and even in death they remained side by side. Police discovered Kaylee and Maddie's bodies together, as if the 2 best friends refused to let go of each other. Xana Kernodle was the free spirit of her family, known for her goofy sense of humor and fierce loyalty. She had blossomed at college, juggling her marketing studies, a part-time job, and an active social life. Ethan Chapin was a warm, outgoing young man who never met a stranger. He was a triplet and incredibly close to his brother and sister, all 3 enrolled at UI together. When Ethan met Xana, sparks flew. They were that couple everyone loved to be around. Always laughing, teasing, and clearly head over heels. The Chapin and Kernodle families took comfort in knowing Xana and Ethan died together, in the same place, because those 2 truly loved each other. These 4 friends shared a beautiful life in that off-campus house: movie nights, study sessions, football games, and weekend parties. They took care of each other. Kaylee was often the mom of the group, always making sure everyone got home safe. Maddie's sweetness and calm balanced Kaylee's bold energy. Ethan's playful jokes and Xana's adventurous ideas kept life fun. They were more than roommates. They were a family. They felt so safe in their little world that nothing could ever truly harm them. That makes the events of November 13th all the more devastating and bewildering. In the immediate aftermath, suspicions ran rampant. Who could have murdered 4 people in a home full of friends and then vanished without a trace?
Sir, why not tell the public who the target was? You've said that this was a targeted attack. Why not tell the public who was targeted? If it was multiple people, it would go a long ways to telling the public what you're looking for and who you're looking for, the type of person you're looking for. Why not do that?
Early police statements called it a targeted attack, suggesting the killer might have known one of the victims, but initially there was no named suspect or motive. Investigators started with those closest to the victims, looking for any jealousy, conflict, or secret. They found nothing obvious. The 2 surviving roommates were interviewed extensively. It was clear they had slept through most of the attack and were traumatized by the discovery, not involved in the crime. One surviving roommate eventually told police she saw a man in black clothing and a mask inside the house that night.
But one of them saw a man she described as being masked, tall, wearing all black with bushy eyebrows around the time that the murders took place.
He walked past her toward a back door while she stood frozen in fear. In her shock, she did not call 911 right away, not realizing the horror unfolding upstairs. This eerie eyewitness detail was kept confidential by investigators at first, but it hinted that the murderer was a stranger who had slipped in and out. Meanwhile, investigators looked into people the victims knew. Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, whom she had phoned multiple times very late that night, was scrutinized, but he was quickly cleared of any involvement. No evidence pointed to anyone in their circle of friends. Despite rampant online speculation spinning wild theories, the real perpetrator remained a mystery. For a while, it seemed the case had no leads. Then a few twists changed everything. Forensic teams at the crime scene found a critical clue, a knife sheath left behind on one victim's bed. It was a leather sheath for a military-style knife, and on its snap fastener was a speck of unknown male DNA. This was presumably the killer's calling card, and now police had a genetic lead. They quietly began working to identify a match. Investigators also combed through surveillance footage from the neighborhood. One grainy video revealed a white car zooming away from the area around 4:20 a.m., just minutes after the estimated time of the murders. The car, identified as a white Hyundai Elantra, had been caught on several cameras slowly cruising near the King Road house in the early morning hours. This stood out as highly unusual. Detectives issued an alert to nearby jurisdictions to be on the lookout for a white Elantra and pored over vehicle registrations.
And we're looking for a 2011 to a 2013 Hyundai Elantra.
By mid-December, they zeroed in on one, a white Hyundai Elantra registered to a 28-year-old Ph.D. student at Washington State University in Pullman, just across the state line. His name was Bryan Kohberger. Investigators kept this lead under wraps, but at last they had a name and a target on their radar. Just over 6 weeks after the murders, the public got a shocking answer to the burning question of who did it. On December 30, 2022, a SWAT team arrested Bryan Christopher Kohberger at his parents' home in Pennsylvania. He was the owner of that white Elantra and the very man investigators had been quietly watching. The arrest was a bombshell. Kohberger was a 28-year-old criminology Ph.D. student at WSU, an academically accomplished individual with no known connection to the four students. He had no criminal record of violence. To the outside world, he seemed like a studious, if awkward, young man. Yet, according to police, this was the person responsible for the vicious massacre in Moscow. As Kohberger's name hit the headlines, pieces of the hidden truth fell into place. Investigators revealed that they had matched the DNA from the knife sheath to Kohberger's family by using forensic genealogy. They had surreptitiously collected trash from the Kohberger family home and obtained a sample, from a thrown-out Q-tip, that was a near-perfect parental DNA match to the unknown profile on the sheath. In other words, the sheath DNA almost certainly belonged to Bryan Kohberger. This was the smoking gun. Digital evidence strengthened the case further. Cell phone records showed that Kohberger's phone had been in the vicinity of the King Road house numerous times in the late nights and early mornings of the weeks leading up to the murders. It appeared he had been surveilling the victims, perhaps stalking one or more of them from afar.
You didn't realize this is 35?
Oh, it's 35?
It is, yeah. So you go.
About 41?
Yeah, 43 was what the radar said.
On the night of the crime, Kohberger's phone was turned off during the actual time of the murders, around 3 to 4 a.m., then mysteriously switched back on shortly after 4 a.m. near a highway south of Moscow. This silence during the critical window was highly suspicious. And, of course, the white Hyundai Elantra seen by witnesses and cameras was registered to him, further tying Kohberger to the scene. Perhaps the most haunting aspect was that Kohberger, the alleged killer, was a criminology student who had been studying the criminal mind. He lived just 10 miles away in Pullman and continued attending classes at WSU for weeks after the murders, concealing any outward sign of guilt. His classmates later noted that when the Idaho stabbings came up in discussion, Kohberger remained stone quiet and hung his head low, as if the topic unnerved him. At the time, they had no idea that he was keeping a terrible secret. To this day, Kohberger's motive remains unclear. There was no known personal link between him and the victims. Did he fixate on them from afar? Was it a twisted experiment or fantasy for him? Only Kohberger knows why he targeted that house on that night, and he has never publicly explained his reasoning. What is clear is that Bryan Kohberger had tried to execute an almost perfect crime, but he left behind enough clues for law enforcement to unravel the truth. The DNA, the car, the phone data, and the courageous observation of the surviving roommate all converged to unmask a killer who had lurked in plain sight. Police had carefully tracked Kohberger's movements and coordinated his arrest in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. On December 30, 2022, a SWAT team took him into custody at his family home in a pre-dawn raid. The community finally breathed a sigh of relief at the news of an arrest. Soon after, Kohberger was extradited back to Idaho to face charges, bringing the intensive cross-state investigation to its end. For the devastated families and the town of Moscow, the arrest brought both comfort and new waves of grief. A face and name were tied to the horror, and he was someone nobody in Moscow even knew. As details of the investigation emerged, people learned how diligently the police and FBI had worked, from analyzing thousands of car registrations to covertly collecting DNA evidence to stakeouts and surveillance across the country. The break in the case was a testament to dogged police work and modern forensic science, a silver lining in an otherwise harrowing saga. In the summer of 2025, the case reached its devastating conclusion. Bryan Kohberger, facing insurmountable evidence, changed his plea to guilty to avoid the death penalty. He confessed in open court to the murders of Madison, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. In return, prosecutors dropped the death sentence. The judge sentenced him to 4 consecutive life terms, plus additional years for burglary.
We support the plea agreement 100%.
Ensuring he would never walk free again. In the courtroom, families spoke through tears, confronting a man who showed no remorse. The judge called his actions cruel and senseless. Justice, in the legal sense, was delivered, but no sentence could fill the silence left by those 4 young lives. After the sentencing, family members hugged and cried. Outside the courthouse, reporters captured the mix of relief and sorrow. "There's no joy in this, because it doesn't bring Kaylee back," Kaylee's father said quietly, "but we're grateful that Monster will spend his life in a cage." The families agreed that while the legal chapter closed, their grief and love for their children would last forever.
This is the Goncalves family.
Maddie has truly been a blessing in our lives.
Ethan just had a great smile. He smiled all the time.
This tragic story is a sobering reminder of how love and trust can be shattered by unseen evil. 4 vibrant young people full of promise lost their lives not to an angry friend or jealous lover, but to a complete stranger with darkness in his heart. It's a stark reminder that evil can hide in plain sight. Who could ever have imagined that a quiet Ph.D. student from a nearby town would harbor such monstrous intentions? Yet this case also demonstrated the strength of a community and the determination of law enforcement. In the aftermath, the victims' families and the Moscow community leaned on each other, honoring the memory of Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan. In their memory, families have started foundations and vowed to keep the victims' legacies alive. Ultimately, truth prevailed over deception. No secret stays buried forever. Even the most carefully hidden crime will eventually come to light. The University of Idaho community will never forget November 13, 2022, and the evil that stole their loved ones is now locked away forever. No one imagined the friendly face in their midst could hide a monster, until it was unmasked. Stay safe, and remember, love and truth are stronger than hate.